Hey guys, hope y'all are doing well. Tonight we're going to go over a pretty interesting topic. Since Christmas is just around the corner, everybody's already starting to get their decorations up, as you see we already have. We're going to study on the wise men, or the Magi. Now this is a very interesting topic when we dive into certain things, because there are key hints in Scripture that can give us a better understanding of just who these guys are. So we're going to start in Matthew 2:1. Now when Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of Herod the king, behold, there came wise men from the east to Jerusalem. Okay, so we have wise men coming from the east. Now the word here for wise men is actually Magi. Okay, so that's the actual Greek word here. Magi, wise men, or astrologers, those that study the stars for signs, or it can mean magicians. So that is what that term kind of generally means. And it says they came from the east, so it's east of Judea, where they're coming from. And chances are that this is not just three guys, it's probably a very large entourage of people with them. Okay, because we're going to notice something in coming verses. So in verse 2, saying, where is he that is born King of the Jews? For we have seen his star in the east, and are come to worship him. So these Magi already know that they've come, that there's a king to be born, and they are coming to worship him. So that shows you there is something very, very special about this particular ruler that they're coming to worship. This isn't just an ordinary king. You don't just go to worship. Kings were born every day. But this one was very, very important. In verse 3, when Herod the king had heard these things, he was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. And when he had gathered all the chief priests and scribes of the people together, he demanded of them where Christ should be born. And they said unto him, in Bethlehem of Judea, for thus it is written by the prophet, and thou, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, art not the least among the princes of Judah. For out of thee shall come a governor, that shall rule my people Israel. Then Herod, when he had privily called the wise men, inquired of them diligently what time the star appeared. And he sent them to Bethlehem, and said, go and search diligently for the young child, and when ye have found him, bring me word again, that I may come and worship him also. So Herod, chances are it's a very large entourage, and this is very threatening to Herod. Herod was an extremely paranoid and very, very evil man. He done terrible things throughout his rule. So he sees this very large party of people from a distant land coming and searching for the new king that was to be born in Israel. And he, immediately wants to find out where this king is meant to be born. And he tries to trick the wise men into giving up finding him for them, finding Jesus for him, so he could try to kill him before he grew up. So we'll talk about Herod for a little bit, because Herod was a terror of a king. And at this time, this was Herod the Great, he was extremely old. He was a very old man, and he had already killed all of his sons but one, as far as we know. And even Augustus Caesar remarked that it is safer to be one of Herod's pigs than one of his children, because Herod was a Jew, and so he kept kosher, so he didn't eat pork. But he killed almost all these different people in his family. He even killed, I believe, his wife, because she had tried to overthrow him at one point. And being that Herod was, one thing that the Jewish leaders kind of thought of Herod, they thought of him as not really a Jew. They thought of him as a Samaritan. They thought of him as a half-Jew. And so there was a lot of insecurity with Herod. And that's one reason that the temple complex, he was the one putting additions onto the temple, and why it became so grand. And, it would have actually been known as one of the 7 wonders of the world before God judged Jerusalem and the Romans came and burned it down. So he built this huge temple to try to placate, hey, I'm just as Jewish as everybody else. Whether that was the case or not, we don't know. And one other thing is, Herod was so messed up that at this point he was dying probably of gonorrhea, is what most people say. And that the day that he was, was to die, he had ordered his soldiers that when he dies, they are to take the most prominent and beloved members of Jewish society, some of the top people, and to have them all brought to Jericho and killed. That way, that on the day that Herod died, there would be mourning throughout the entire land. That is how crooked and messed up this guy really was. And you see that as him trying to kill the new king, Jesus. So let's continue in verse 9. When they had heard the king, they departed, and lo, the star which they saw in the east went before them till it came and stood over where the young child was. And when they saw the star, they rejoiced and were with exceeding great joy. And when they were come into the house, they saw the young child with Mary his mother, and fell down and worshipped him. And when they had opened their treasures, they presented unto him gifts, gold, and frankincense, and myrrh. Okay, so they follow the star, and they're exceedingly happy. They are so happy. They came from such a distant land, and they're finally there. They're about to witness the new king. Now, and they're about to worship this new king, which shows that this king is a divine king. Divine. And this is very interesting. Notice the gifts that they brought to him. Number one, the gold. That is obviously a gift for a king. Now let's go to Exodus 30, 34 through 36. 30, 34 through 36. And the Lord said unto Moses, take unto thee sweet spices, stat and I don't know that word, and gabanum, these sweet spices with pure frankincense, and each shall be like a weight. And thou shalt make it a perfume, a confection after the art of apothecary, tempered together, pure and holy. And thou shalt beat some of it very small, and put it before where? The testimony in the tabernacle of the congregation, where I will meet with thee, and it shall be unto you most holy. So, frankincense was used as a holy incense that was to be put in the Holy of Holies before the Ark of the Covenant. The Ark of the Covenant where the Ten Commandments were put. And this was the symbol. The Ark of the Covenant is the symbol of the covenant God had with the Israelites. So they brought him frankincense, the sign of the new covenant that this king would perform, would make, or would bring about. So that is very interesting. Now let's go back to verse 11 in Matthew 2:11. We're going to read, and what was the last gift? Myrrh. Okay, gold, frankincense, and myrrh. So now let's go to John 19:39 and see what the significance of this gift is. 19:39. And there came also Nicodemus, which at the first time came to Jesus by night, and brought a mixture of myrrh with aloes and about 100 pound weight. And they took the body of Jesus and wound it in linen clothes with the spices, as a manner of the Jews is to bury. So myrrh is an embalming oil meant for embalming the dead. So the three gifts that the wise men, the Magi, bring is they shows that it's going to be a divine priestly king that is to die. That is incredible when you really look into that. So let's go finish back up in Matthew in verse 12. And being warned of God in a dream that they should not return to Herod, they departed into their own country another way. Okay, so God appeared to the Magi in a dream and warns them not to go and report back to Herod. So instead of going to Herod, they go back to their own country in another way. So now we need to ask ourselves, who are these guys? Where is their home country? Where are they from? Now, one of the keys, there's two big keys. One, they're from the east. So it's east of Jerusalem. Okay? Number two, their name, wise men or Magi. That is a very important, because we see the same term if you read, the Greek Septuagint. We see the same term because Magi means wise men, astrologer. Okay? And we see the same term in the Old Testament. Now let's go to Daniel chapter 2, verse 2. Then the king commanded to call the magicians and the astrologers and the sorcerers and the Chaldeans for to show the king his dream. So they came and stood before the king. So this word is in Greek, it's called Magus used here. It is the same term used in the Old Testament, okay? And it describes astrologers and sorcerers, magicians, and things like that. So wise men. And so this particular thing, what we're going to study here is who these people are in Daniel. Now, the king has specific religious sects that he used for interpreting dreams and stars and things such as that. Now, Daniel was written while after the Babylon had conquered Judea, okay, had conquered Jerusalem, and had took all the Jews out of Judea and Jerusalem and brought them to Babylon. Now, Daniel was one of the very wisest people living at the time. He was a prophet that was living in Babylon. Now, there's some interesting things here, too. The book of Daniel is written in two languages, Hebrew and Aramaic. Chapters 1 and then 8 through 12 are written in Hebrew. But chapters 2 through 7 are written in Aramaic. Aramaic is the trade language, kind of like English is the trade language today, where almost you can go about anywhere and somebody will know English. It was a language known by about everyone. So we can ascertain from this that since the chapters 2 through 7 were written in the common language, we can conclude that these were meant for everybody to read at that time. Not just for the Jews to read, but also it was important prophecies for the entire world to know about. Okay, so now we're going to go to verse 7. They answered again and said, "Let the king tell his servants the dream, and we will show the interpretation of it." So the Magus wanted Nebuchadnezzar to tell them this particular dream he had. He wanted these people, the wise men, to interpret this dream he had, because it baffled him. But instead of just interpreting and him telling them, he wanted them to tell the dream to him. Otherwise, they could just be making stuff up, telling him whatever he wanted to hear. And so he wanted them to tell him the dream. Now in verse 10 through 12, the Chaldeans answered before the king and said, "There is not a man upon the earth that can show the king's matter. Therefore, there is no king, lord, nor ruler that asks such things of any magician or astrologer or Chaldean. And it is rare thing that the king requireth, and there is none other that can show it before the king except the gods, whose dwelling is not with flesh. For this cause the king was angry and very furious, and commanded to destroy all the wise men of Babylon." So the Magi, or the Magus, are coming to the king saying, "Nobody can do this. You're asking something that is impossible. Only the gods can tell you what you dreamed. No man can do this." Now let's read, and in verse 12, the king is furious. He's going to put them to death because he thinks they're useless. They couldn't do what he had asked them for, and he is wroth with anger. Let's read in verse 13. "And the decree went forth that the wise men should be slain, and they brought Daniel and his fellows to be slain." They sought Daniel, and his fellows to be slain. So what happens? They sought out Daniel and his fellows. Now let's go to verse 16. "Then Daniel went in and desired of the king that he would give him time, that he would show the king the interpretation. So Daniel goes before the king, and he asks for time. So don't kill the wise men, don't kill anybody. Give me time, and I will see if God will reveal this dream that you've had. Okay? Now let's skip down to verse 19. Then was the secret revealed unto Daniel in a night vision. Then Daniel blessed the God of heaven. So God then reveals the dream that King Nebuchadnezzar had. So we're going to skip down to verse 24. Therefore Daniel went in unto Arioch, that's one of the guards, whom the king had ordained to destroy the wise men of Babylon. He went and said thus unto him, Destroy not the wise men of Babylon. Bring me in before the king, and I will show unto the king the interpretation. So Daniel saves the wise men of Babylon. He goes and saves the Magi that were living there. And he says, I will interpret dreams because God has revealed it to him. Now we're going to skip the bulk of this prophecy. We might go and have a video focused just on these prophecies sometime, but we're going to skip things for time because for this video, there's going to be something important we're going to read in it. Okay, we're going to go to verse 40. And now this is the prophecy. This is the dream. Okay, Nebuchadnezzar has a dream. He sees a statue, head of gold, and he goes, and each part of the body is a different, type of metal. Okay, and at the very bottom, this is where we're going to pick up. And the fourth kingdom shall be strong as iron, for as much as iron breaketh in pieces and subdueth all things, and as iron that breaketh all these, shall it break into pieces and bruise. Now, most people, most commentators say that particular kingdom, this empire, is Rome, which is the very kingdom that was ruling over Judea during the time that Jesus was born and lived. Now we're going to skip down to verse 44 through 45. And in the days of these kings shall the God of heaven set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed, and the kingdom shall not be left to other people, but it shall break in pieces and consume all these kingdoms, and it shall stand forever. So at the end, God takes us. Let me see here. Let me see. I may have skipped a little piece. Oh, I'm sorry. Verse 45. I did. Verse 45, For as much as thou sawest that the stone was cut out of the mountain without hands, that it brake in pieces the iron, the brass, the clay, the silver, and gold. That's the statue. So the whole statue. A stone is cut out of a mountain and thrown against the statue, and it breaks everything apart. Okay? And the great God hath made known to the king what shall come to pass hereafter. And the dream is certain, and the interpretation thereof is sure. So God will takes a stone and smashes the statue, and a new kingdom is set up. One that can never be destroyed, one that will consume all others. It will stand forever. The eternal kingdom of God. Now, this is very interesting, because I'm just going to chop this out there. Who do you think this stone represents? I'll throw some verses on the video and you can see what I'm talking about. Okay, so Daniel interprets the dream for Nebuchadnezzar. And listen, he saves the wise men. He saves them. Now let's go to verse 46 through 48. Then the king Nebuchadnezzar fell upon his face and worshipped Daniel, and commanded that they should offer an oblation and sweet odors. And who is they? That's all the wise men, all the people. The king answered unto Daniel and said, Of a truth it is that your God is a God of gods and a Lord of kings and a revealer of secrets, seeing thou couldest reveal this secret. Then the king made Daniel a great man and gave him many great gifts, and made him ruler over the whole province of Babylon, and the chief of the governors over what? All the wise men of Babylon. So Daniel becomes a leader, the ruler over all the wise men of Babylon, all the Magi. So they would have honored Daniel very, very much. He had just saved their very lives. So Daniel would have been an honored man under these people. And if we look at the prophecies that are written in Daniel, and the ones especially in Aramaic, we can see they would have had all the prophecies of Daniel. Okay, they would have had them all. But those in Aramaic, you can see, like in Daniel 7:21, you can see where the priestly kingdom of God okay, and the divine Son of Man in Daniel 7:13 through 14. And then if you go to Daniel 9:24 through 29, 26, you see the anointed king that would die, that has come to die for the people, to make an atonement for the people. So these Magi from the east, Babylon, would have treasured Daniel, and who had saved their lives, and whose God was truly a God of gods and a Lord of kings. And also, if it's interesting, you can do this on your own as well. If you go to Daniel 9, if you look at the prophecy of the weeks, okay, and you add up these prophecies, you will see that the time that the anointed one, the Messiah, is to come, it adds up to the 1st century AD, the very time that Jesus Christ was born and lived and went to the cross. So these people would have had Daniel's prophecies of a Son of Man, a priestly divine king that was going to come and set up the kingdom, and who was come to die for the atonement of the people. So I hope this was interesting. I hope it was edifying. And I thank you guys so much for listening. I hope y'all have a great evening, and God bless.